Welcome to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. Legal issues simplified through real client stories and real-world experiences. Creating simplicity in 3, 2, 1.
Well, welcome back to the Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd.
As business attorneys for healthcare practices, we meet a lot of interesting people and learn their amazing stories. This season's theme is the business of medicine today. Gone, Brad, are the days of grandpa's medical practice with paper charts and old school treatments. We're going to confront the business and healthcare issues faced by the modern medical practice.
Although I still think it would be fun to talk about some of the compliance issues that our grandpa's medical practice is probably looking at. But speaking of old school and old school treatments, that reminds me of some college stories that I might share today with about some of my fellow TCU students.
Oh, man.
And it may make them sound, Michael, a little less than law-abiding.
The moment you said college, I knew it was bad. Like, I don't know whether to call your college friends that you're about to rat them out and break the code, or should I call your mom now or at least after the episode to let her know that Bradford ByrdAdatto is not behaving.
First, this really was not me, but picture this. TCU campus, Christmas season, local tree lot, mysteriously loses dozens of Christmas trees. Turns out some fraternity decided their holiday spirit needed a little extra greenery.
Please tell me that you were not involved with this, Brad.
I plead the fifth. No, really, I was not involved. But let's just say I actually knew where the trees went. And apparently it looked really good in the backyard of some TCU student's house until the cops arrived. And after that, it wasn't enough. The same group may have later stolen a big boy statue, the old classic American hamburger mascot, and left it on a sorority house lawn like some kind of fast food Santa gift that they dropped off.
Well, I don't doubt your capabilities of doing many things, and I may know of some things that you've confessed to doing in college, but thievery is not one of them. So I'm glad to hear you were not involved with that. But I guess, do all the TCU students' college resume include stealing trees and, what we used to call it in Dallas was Kip's big boy, stealing that mascot?
Nope, not all. But that might be why I became a lawyer in defense of my fellow horned frogs. But here's the kicker. I just read about a group in Pennsylvania who stole a Ronald McDonald statue right off its bench. No Big Macs, it's just the big missing mascot. And police are calling it a McRobbery.
Are the police calling it a McRobbery? Because this smells like a Brad joke.
No, it is not a handcrafted Brad joke, but the police did come up with it because I believe they have a good sense of humor too. But unfortunately, Michael, at this time, no ransom note has been delivered, and this means that the staff is not McLovin' it.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
You're welcome, America.
Yeah, I'm seeing a pattern. Mascots everywhere living in fear because of people like you, Brad.
Hey, I've retired from any alleged mascot liberations, but Michael, be honest. Do you have any similar stories from your college days?
What did you say a few minutes ago about pleading the fifth? My wild side was, kids, I hope you're listening, studying late at the library.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what you were doing. I'm not buying it. I know too many of your college day stories.
I think what you meant to say, Brad, is that you and I have a nuclear option against each other. I know your stories too, and we have a pact. I mean, it wasn't a blood oath, but I think that we have a pact. So, hopefully the police will find the McRobbers and bring order to this mascot kidnapping.
Exactly. I feel bad for this mascot. And speaking of order, let's jump into today's topic before the police show up and start knocking out at my door, asking me questions about this McRobbery.
Okay. Well, what do you have for us today on our story?
All right. Our story today starts with a nurse practitioner working at a wellness clinic that had a large medical weight loss practice. We'll call the clinic the Christmas Clinic, and we'll call the nurse practitioner McNurse. and she was one of many providers at the Christmas clinic.
Okay, very predictable and acceptable given the stories you just shared. But a serious question, did McNurse own the Christmas clinic?
No, she was just an employee of the practice, but was one of their leading experts on medical weight loss, including prescribing weight loss drugs like semaglutides, also sometimes called GLP-1s.
Yes, and audience, for those who haven't been watching the news the last couple of years, these GLP-1s, you hear the most common brand name you'll hear is Ozempic, but there's also Wegovy, Mounjaro, and Zepbound, and more seem to be coming out, and more are coming out, and these are commonly used by wellness and longevity clinics for weight loss. So, Brad, you said prescribing weight loss drugs. Was McNurse using the name brands that we just talked about, or was she prescribing compounded weight loss drugs?
Well, the Christmas clinic first started on prescribing weight loss drugs. They exclusively were prescribing compounded drugs.
Yeah, and I think what you're alluding to, for those who've been listening to us talk about this for the last 2 years, is it has been a roller coaster. Would that be the right way to describe it? On this whole idea of whether or not you can compound these GLP-1s. And so that's what everybody was doing until late 2024. And then for sure by early 2025, kind of at a high level, the legal issue that we've covered in depth in prior episodes is that this was in such demand that there was a shortage. And when there was a shortage, that allows, through the FDA, allows for this process for you to compound these drugs. And so the controversy and the changes started happening when, the pharmaceutical companies said that they, claimed that there was no longer a shortage, and ultimately the FDA agreed. And so these were removed from the shortage list, and that, kind of created this, this change in, where, what's the regulatory landscape for compounding. And so that's kind of, I'm guessing, where you're headed with your statement that they used to exclusively do it. And so I'm wondering what they're doing now.
Yeah, I agree. And the shift by the FDA has caused lots of shifts in the wellness and longevity clinics on what they were prescribing.
Yeah, and I speak Brad, so I think you mean, Brad, prescribing compounded versus prescribing the name brands.
Correct, yes. Many clinics stopped prescribing compounded as they thought with this shortage over, which is where we are now, they could no longer prescribe weight loss drugs.
Yeah, and it was fascinating because, there's a lot of different things out there that created this fear factor, but it's not exactly true. Not to say there isn't risk that we'll talk about, but the main thing is that the FDA does not control the practice of medicine. And we've talked about that a bunch in prior episodes.
Yeah, and that's correct, right? And the Christmas clinic had conducted more research and learned first what you just said, that the FDA does not control the practice of medicine, and then they learned that their providers could still prescribe compounded GLP-1s during this drug only if all these elements are met. One, that it was documented medical necessity. Two, there was a significant difference between the commercial product and the compounded product. And three, the prescription is patient specific, and that can't be one of the, if you notice those three I just listed, not one of them is for cost saving alone. It's not a valid reason.
Was it a valid reason, like as an exception, if you got your hands on like a Ronald McDonald statue or some other mascot?
I'll have to address that with the council.
Oh, okay. I mean, that may be why that's happening. Maybe they think they can prescribe. So how did this impact the Christmas clinic?
The Christmas clinic, what they had to do was what a lot of clinics were doing. They had to update all their standard operating procedures, and that if a patient did meet the above 3 elements we described, they could still prescribe this compounded GLP-1s. But again, those 3 elements need to be in existence.
Yeah. So SOPs, I think that's a vocabulary word for today, standing operating procedures. And so, this is, kind of your processes and your consents that the patients end up signing that become really important. And depending on, how you go about it when you're trying to, meet these 3 elements and prescribe compounded. So where are you going with the story, Brad?
Well, once the NPs of the Christmas clinic, one of them was just this. So we had already one NP was obviously McNurse, but this one we have a different one, and we're going to call this other NP at the Christmas clinic Nurse Big Boy. Nurse Big Boy did not like the practice because he did not like what the practice was doing here, because he believed they were not following these new FDA quote unquote, his words, laws.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of speaks to what we experienced with just, a lot of noise out there, and real changes. I don't want to, undersell that part of it, but there was some that had that hardline position or reaction that this law, prevented it.
Correct. Yeah. And, so what happened is Nurse Big Boy, because he didn't like these, this way the practice was doing, decided he would reach out to the state nursing board to get a better clarification if an NP, so again, just nurse practitioners, could still prescribe compounded GLP-1s with the change in these FDA laws.
Well, that's always you never know what you're going to get. That's really interesting. Some nursing boards can be super helpful and some can't be, and sometimes you don't know the difference. I'm curious, what did he learn?
Well, Nurse Big Boy spoke with a registered nurse that worked for the nursing board. This registered nurse working for the nursing board told Nurse Big Boy that if it was illegal to still prescribe any compounded GLP-1s now that the FDA had changed the shortage status of the drugs, that NPs could only prescribe branded drugs now.
Well, I have to admire the clarity and conviction of this nursing board representative.
Yes. So Nurse Big Boy told the Christmas clinic that this update that he learned and demanded that they cease prescribing compounded GLP-1s. The Christmas clinic was thrown off by the nursing board's position as it was counter to what the actual FDA laws said. So additionally, McNurse here had spent a lot of time in educating herself on the exception to the rule and did understand why the nursing board would take this type of position. So she called the nursing board and spoke with a registered nurse that worked for the nursing board and asked the exact same question that Nurse Big Boy did. And as part of their conversation, actually explained the FDA exception. Michael, guess what happened?
I'm guessing that there may not have been the same conviction and clarity that from before. She got a different answer than Nurse Big Boy?
Correct. Now the Christmas clinic and all the NPs were confused as the nursing board has stated 2 responses which actually countered each other.
And audience, this is actually not that uncommon to have, when you reach out to a board, to have something like this happen where you get inconsistent answers or that they don't even know the answer. So I'm curious, Brad, is this when we were involved?
No, not yet. And understand, a lot of people's probably at this point trying to wonder what's the risk here. And it's difficult really to walk through risk because we weren't on the calls and the nursing board had obviously recommended countering best practices.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so when did we get involved?
Not yet. But the Christmas clinic and McNurse felt comfortable that they were following the FDA exception, and they decided that they could still continue to prescribe compounded drugs.
Okay, makes sense. They took their position with this conflicting, information. What happened next?
So Nurse Big Boy believed the initial call with the nursing board was the correct course of action, best practices, because he had spoken with other NPs in the community, and they agreed with Nurse Big Boy. This was, again, so this was where we encountered the police came busting into the Christmas clinic.
Okay, Brad, I have to call BS on that. I mean, police came in? No, I mean, surely that's not what happened.
No, it didn't happen, but
Okay.
it sounded more dramatic, didn't it?
It did.
Okay,
yes.
yeah. I should have added that the police found the McDonald statue, the Ronald McDonald statue at the Christmas clinic. Would that help?
Oh, because of the exception?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, what really happened, Brad?
Nurse Big Boy was so upset that the Christmas clinic and McNurse were not following his interpretation of the nursing board / FDA laws that he went home and over email resigned that night as he felt like the Christmas clinic was jeopardizing his license. And so he just did not return to the clinic.
Okay. I will say this. I mean, he may have been acting on some misinformation, but it looks like he took his license seriously. We can at least say that about him. So what happened next?
Well, approximately 90 days after Nurse Big Boy resigned from the Christmas clinic, the McNurse and the Christmas clinic received a complaint filed with the nursing board that they were jeopardizing patient safety by prescribing compounded GLP-1 drugs. The complaint listed several Christmas clinic patients, all of which McNurse had been treating.
Okay, well, now it sounds like Nurse Big Boy took it to another level. It wasn't just, protecting his own license, but he must have felt I'm assuming that he felt the obligation and he was the person behind it, but maybe we'll go into commercial and discuss legal applications that we've learned from the story today and find out what happened with the Christmas clinic and McNurse.
Many business owners use legal counsel as a last resort rather than as a proactive tool that can further their success. Why? For most, it's the fear of unknown legal costs. ByrdAdatto's Access Plus program makes it possible for you to get the ongoing legal assistance you need for one predictable monthly fee. That gives you unlimited phone and email access to the legal team, so you can receive feedback on legal concerns as they arise. Access Plus, a smarter, simpler way to access legal services. Find out more. Visit ByrdAdatto.com today.
Welcome back to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto. Still here with my co-host, Michael Byrd. Now, Michael, as a reminder, this season our theme is the business of medicine today. And we just had a really interesting story about the Christmas clinic.
Yeah, we have three main characters. We have the Christmas clinic, as you mentioned. We have McNurse, and then we have Nurse Big Boy. And, what we had was when the changes in the laws happened with the GLP-1s and the compounding, some confusion. Yeah. And, a lot of the confusion was kind of even enhanced by two different phone calls to the nursing board trying to seek clarity, and they got the exact opposite of that.
Yes.
And Nurse Big Boy, believing that what he heard from the nursing board was right, quit. And immediately, once the Christmas clinic was continuing to prescribe compounded GLP-1s, and so we left off kind of with the hanging question I pose is, was Nurse Big Boy the one who actually filed it?
Yeah. Yes, your assumption was correct. Nurse Big Boy had filed it. He actually had taken names of some of the patients and added their names to the complaint, meaning that the patients were not the ones complaining, but Nurse Big Boy was the one who had filed it with the nursing board. And before we pick up where we left off in the story, Michael, let's actually take a step back here and let's discuss some of the aspects of the story that we kind of started talking about a little bit, but during the commercial break, that seemed kind of vague to what was happening.
Okay, well, before I start, please tell me, Brad, that we don't have to have HIPAA talk.
For you, we'll skip it. Okay. Just focus on the multiple calls to the nursing board and not the the names that Nurse Big Boy took from the practice that he wasn't even probably treating.
Perfect. Well, so I'll start with this. Any call to the nursing board, you need to hold loosely whatever information you get from them. It's not uncommon that you'll get anything ranging from, we won't offer legal opinions, you need to talk to your attorney, to giving you an answer. What you have to realize is that you're not really hearing from the nursing board. You're hearing from someone who works at the nursing board. And so that's not going to really end up being the official position of the nursing board. And so, again, you got to be really careful with it. Now, I will say this. If you get an answer like the second answer that says you can do it, and you get that, especially if you get that in writing, it is helpful because you can use that later if they come after you to say, look, I relied on this, and that usually does help you. It doesn't mean you won't have to change if they don't agree with it, but it may, minimize you getting in trouble and getting your fines. But you have to just be really careful. That official nursing board or board positions usually is going to be something that's in writing or from their general counsel.
Yeah, and to your point, if it's directed to a particular practice or to a particular nurse, I know in other states like Florida where people want to do certain things, if they will ask the nursing board for permission, or in Arizona they'll ask it, and if they respond to you and say yes, then you're golden. Now, other people might try to rely on it, but understand that it's the yes is, unless they officially release it to all nurses, nursing board, it's a position for a particular person. In this particular case, what complicated the matter was that neither party stopped to ask for additional guidance from the board. And to your point, none of it was in writing. It was all, a conversation, a call. They both fell back on their theory that it must be true, because it followed what they believe to be best practices.
Yeah, I mean, I would even add, that, what they failed to do was, at that time, was reach out to healthcare counsel and get some guidance on that, because you have to understand how are they going to know what to do with that information they're getting with the nursing board unless they get some professional guidance.
Yeah, and then to your guidance, that the nurse practitioners started reaching out to their friends to gather similar talking points as to what was the word in the street as it relates to prescribing compounded GLP-1s.
Well, to be fair, I would probably rather call some friends on the street than you, Brad.
That's very fair.
Although it didn't work out very well. I mean, seriously. There's great danger in the locker room talk. We've talked about that on other episodes. It's going to happen again. Because other people do it doesn't mean it's right. And because you don't know where they're getting their information from. And so, you can have this kind of, pocket of non-compliance where you have a bunch of people doing it one way and they never even got the right guidance on it, and it just compounds itself. No pun intended.
Wow. Good for you, Michael. I'm so proud of you.
I know my audience.
Taking that next step is, besides the risk from the nursing board, a lot of the communities and clinics were talking about these nasty letters they started receiving from the manufacturers that were sent to the clinics saying that, hey, it's illegal basically to prescribe compounded drugs, and because of the being off the shortage. So now you have that noise that's happening out there too at the same time, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, the pharmaceutical companies, they hired Big Law, and they sent these big scary letters. I'm sure there's many in the audience listening nodding their heads right now because they've seen it or heard about them, and they're intimidating because you've got a big fancy law firm writing these letters citing to, everything, under the sun to try to get you to stop, including, I think, like South Africa
and
law.
Australia.
Yeah. And, what we've, assessed is it looked like that they were just kind of throwing everything against the wall to see what would stick. And, what we've also observed is that there hasn't been any real, meaningful direct enforcement against the practices of these letters at this point. There has been some, but most of it has been at least kind of a first shot across the bow, and you know, if practices are hiring counsel to engage in that and respond to it, you know, so far nothing really has materialized.
Yeah, and this is different than those who are utilizing. There's a marketing spree that they were using their names and stuff on the website. This has to do with on the practice side, the practice of medicine side, saying you can't be practicing medicine this way, which again, Big Law is trying to, as you said, intimidate. However, we did start seeing some medical boards take positions. So we were talking about that earlier on compounding medical weight loss drugs. So the state of Mississippi was one of the first ones out there that actually came out and said it is outside the standard of care in Mississippi to prescribe compounded weight loss drugs. And not only that, they actually went further and they said if you are prescribing weight loss drugs, it must be on label to prescribe it.
Yeah, so we've talked about on-label versus off-label in prior episodes, and that, you know, when a drug is approved by the FDA, it is approved for a purpose, and so as an example, Ozempic is actually approved on label for diabetes treatment, and so in your example of Mississippi, if someone prescribed Ozempic for weight loss, that would be an off-label use. Now, there are other name brands that are for weight loss that would be on-label use.
Yeah. So the risk associated, understand audience members, on compounding GLPs has now shifted over to the actual providers. They now must have to take a position as to why are they still prescribing the compounded weight loss drugs. And we talked about earlier, with the term of art is it a medically justified reason? Remember those three elements we talked about? And that they must do a very good job, if they are doing that, to document it clearly why it is.
Yeah, and I'll say, you know, that when you say risk shift, I mean, think of it like you have the practice, but you also have the pharmacy that fills these prescriptions. And so if you or the doctor are relying on these exceptions that you've mentioned, Brad, that to your point, they're making a medical decision, and so the pharmacy is just carrying out, you know, what the provider has prescribed, and so there is this risk shift element that has happened that many of the practices maybe not fully appreciate. But I'm curious, Brad, what happened with the Christmas clinic in McNurse?
Lucky for them, this particular state nursing board had not taken a position at this time that nurse practitioners could not prescribe compounded GLP-1s. As such, the Christmas Clinic and McNurse provided copies of their patient consents, evidence that each patient did have the option to actually buy name brands in these consents, and why, when they were sending compounded prescription, that it was based on an individual basis on the medical necessity of it.
All right. That's a better outcome than we could have hoped for, Brad. Yep. What are your final thoughts?
This is an interesting time to be practicing medicine. I mean, hence the theme, but the technology of medicine is moving faster than most medical, nursing, and pharmacy boards can really keep up. Each board can take a variety of different positions. So you could be being compliant with one board and being non-compliant with another. So every single particular practice is important for you to slow down, spend some time better understanding if you are adding a new service line or the laws change, what are going to be the best practices in your state based on your particular license. Michael, with our last minute here, what's your final thought?
Yeah, and I'll echo, I mean, you really honed in on the risk, Brad. It's your state level. FDA doesn't regulate practice of medicine. So far, the pharmaceutical companies are not really coming after practices, so it's honed in on the state. And to your point, you know, your actual license, so your board, if you're clear from a risk perspective, you know, what are the things to do? You want to make sure you document well if you're prescribing compounded, and you want to make sure your charts reflect the exception, and you want to make sure that you have the appropriate patient consents for compounded, and perhaps most importantly, check with your malpractice carrier to make sure that they will cover, the prescription of compounded drugs under your malpractice policy, because a lot have taken a position against that.
Right. Excellent. Well, good job, Michael. Next Wednesday's show, we're back and we'll continue down this journey of the business of medicine today when we examine the benefits and utilization of use of staff for promos. Thanks again for joining us today. And remember, if you like this episode, please subscribe. Make sure to give us a 5-star rating and share with your friends.
You can also sign up for the ByrdAdatto newsletter by going to our website at ByrdAdatto.com.
ByrdAdatto is providing this podcast as a public service. This podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast does not constitute legal advice, nor does it establish an attorney-client relationship. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by ByrdAdatto. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Please consult with an attorney on your legal issues.